Today, join me in welcoming Justin Williamson to the show. Justin is a financial planner with Barnum Financial Group who constantly performs at a high level for his clients. He's here to talk about his career in the industry and what the future may hold for him. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. All right, Justin Williamson, welcome to Small Steps, Big Wins. I'm so excited to have you here. And I think I have to give a little bit of build up to this. I've known you through the years, but didn't really know you. And then about 5 years ago, I was very fortunate that you and your team at the time, that has evolved a little bit since then, but decided that Barnum was the place you'd like to finish your career for a host of good reasons. And I'm so excited to have you here. And when I think back to those 5 years that you've been here, the amount of growth and the type of business you built is just so exciting. So I can't wait for you to share that with everybody today.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Yeah, it's a real honor to be here, and I appreciate you having me.
Well, my pleasure. So I always like to start from the beginning. So I know you've been in the business for a good amount of years now. Why don't you tell us how you got started and why? And, everyone likes to know, where did this all begin?
Yeah, sure. So it wasn't exactly the most traditional start to the career. I was actually going to college full time, and I was working full time at a very fast paced electronics store, believe it or not. This was, 20 years ago. I'm still really good friends with a lot of the guys that I met at the electronics store. And it was an incentive-based job. Basically my compensation was tied directly to how much I sold. And I realized that, really the more that I hustled and the more customers that I helped, and quite frankly, the more problems that I solved, the more financially rewarding the job was. And so after, graduating with my degree, I realized that I wanted to, do something kind of similar, where I was solving problems and helping people to implement solutions, but just on a much bigger scale. So that's really where I kind of got the start of this wonderful career.
Well, it's interesting. And it's interesting that many young men and women would, while they're in school, they probably wouldn't want a job where you do more, you make more. They'd want to get a salary, but you were built for that. And so pretty awesome that you were able to turn that into a career in the financial services. So when you think of, getting started and you had that hustle, but how was it hard? How did it work? Did you just hit the ground running and have the same success you had in the electronics store, or was it a little difficult in the beginning?
Yeah, no, it was a lot of trial by fire. So back then I wasn't part of a team. I was more or less a lone wolf for kind of the first 5 or 6 years of my career. But I did a ton of joint work, and I really acted like a sponge, and I tried to pick up as many little nuggets as I could from different advisors. And it was a grind. I mean, I was far beyond driven. I was working, probably 70 hours a week. Saturdays were, non-negotiable. That was a big part of my career starting off. And when I wasn't actually doing anything client facing, prospecting or on calls with clients, I was a voracious reader. I was learning about the industry. I've always had an interest in personal finance. And so I thought to be a better, well-rounded advisor, I needed to know, a little bit about everything. And I didn't need to be like a master at every single facet of personal finance, but I wanted to know enough to be dangerous. So, constantly reading, even if it was just Yahoo Finance or Kiplinger or the Journal. And that was really, I'd say the first 5 years was just, 90 miles an hour right out of the gate.
Well, it's interesting. And now as you're saying that, I want to unbundle what you said, the mandatory Saturdays on the 70 hours. Did someone tell you that? Or is that just hey, I'm in this career now. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to be successful. Or were you told to do that? How did that happen?
Yeah, I guess it was a combination of both. I mean, some of my original mentors and management team, they definitely preached that whole work hard, play hard mentality and, working evenings and working Saturdays. But, I knew that was what I had to do in order to take this thing to the next level. And, I've listened to a bunch of your podcasts, Paul, and I hear you talk about how there was a couple Thursdays where you wanted to quit the business. The thought never even crossed my mind. I was just like a maniac running through a brick wall.
I love it. I love it. And it's interesting because what I teach today to young advisors is, you're coming into an entrepreneurial career, but be an entrepreneur to get started. And why I asked the question was, it's like, listen to the formula. And if they're listening, guys, listen to Justin, 70 hours, mandatory Saturdays, studying when he's not client facing or booking meetings. That's what it takes. And then I say to them, we're going to tell you to be an entrepreneur. Don't ever stop doing that. But then you start to stack the entrepreneurism on it and going into building a staff and all that other stuff. And listen, when it's all said and done, I was coaching a young advisor today that is sitting for their CFP and their ChFC in November. And I said during the coaching session later on, I said, that you're taking away all the silent objections that you might be getting from clients now because you got those designations at the end of your name. And now you've taken all the guesswork out of it. But, you've paid a big price as an entrepreneur to get where you are. So I'm going to assume that you got to 5 years. And then, I would love to know the turning point. Was it now that you got to see a lot of people and you weren't teaming, but you were doing a lot of joint stuff and getting mentored? Is that how you tripped on to teaming, or how did it start to work out that you started, your first team?
Yeah, great question. So when I look back and I reflect, I really feel like there were 4 different points in my career that were kind of like epiphanies that really had a major impact on my growth as an advisor. I think the first was meeting my partner, Rick. So Rick Fortune is the other senior partner on my team. I met him about 13 years ago. And he really is a legend in this business. And he is someone who kind of coached me to not always be so hyper analytical. I'm a spreadsheet guy. I'm someone who needs to know everything about every product and recommendation before I make it inside and out. I'm an overthinker. I'm the type of person that shows up for a job interview an hour ahead of time and I'm in the parking lot, studying and prepping. And, Rick really taught me how to communicate with people on a personal level and, focus more on the behavioral part of finance, not so much the standard deviation of a mutual fund, but really the why and what motivates people. So I think that was number one. And, I look at our team back then and it was really 5 people and it was more of a producer group. And we're building towards more of a formal, business really. And so that was kind of the starting point. I think the second turning point would be getting my CFP designation, which was about a decade ago. I look like a baby. I've grown this beard out since COVID. I started growing it and my wife said, you know what, that looks good. Just keep the beard. But before the beard, I looked like I was 10 years younger. So when I started in my 20s, I looked like I was a teenager. And so getting that CFP designation, it really gave me like a swagger kind of in the field that I didn't have before. And it's real practical stuff. Like, thinking back at my securities tests, I never used the Investment Act of 1933 on a client-facing meeting.
And you never will.
Yeah, exactly. But the CFP, it's like real, actual, tangible things that you could use and you can implement in your practice. And so that was such a big turning point, was getting that designation. And it was so much sacrifice that went into getting it. So I think that was number 2. I think the third turning point was meeting my other partner, Alec Hardy. So he's my junior. Rick and I brought him in about 8 or 9 years ago. Rick is the partner that is the big picture partner. And then Alec is like in the trenches with me. And Alec is really helping me to scale the practice and to, think about more than just cases and clients, but build this thing out, more for like a 5 and a 10 year vision. And then I think the fourth turning point was really meeting you, Paul. I knew you prior to our engagement 5 years ago, but, meeting with you and joining the Barnum team, there's no doubt that we were on the right track, but the resources and the infrastructure that Barnum has and your vision has helped to just exponentially grow this thing at a much quicker pace than I had ever imagined.
Well, that's great. And it's interesting because you're right. I probably should change the question when I ask. Sometimes I ask if it clicked or when there's a turning point, but turning points is really because there are multiple turning points in a long, in a 20-year career. So, well, let's dig in on that. So you have this team, you guys are growing, you hit 3 of those turning points already. You're going along and things are moving. Obviously COVID hits, but we meet, you make the move to Barnum. And now fill us in, let's start at the end, meaning today, but what's the team look like now over the last, because that was 5 years ago, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So tell me now where it was and where it is now.
Yeah, so it's a work in progress. Actually, I'm building out org charts as we speak and kind of reshuffling the deck a little bit as far as the team goes. But it right now there's 2 senior partners. There's me and Rick. Then we have 5 partner level associates. So those are advisors that are doing a consistent production level that's well above industry average. Yep. And they've been, I would say somewhere between 4 to 7 years in the business. And then we have about 4 junior associates and we have an administrative staff of about five people right now.
So let me get the math here. So 2, 4, 4. So that's 10 advisors and then 5 staff right now.
Yeah. Yep.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I'm sure that it's very different than what it was 5 years ago. How is the day-to-day different for you today than it was? And where are you now?
Sure. So, starting off in the business, it was really all about just seeing as many people as possible, working as many hours, learning as much as possible. And it really was all encompassing from a, day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis. And today, I have lofty personal production goals, but my scope is now grown to make sure that my team and advisors and support staff are also in the best position to succeed. And so our team is definitely a younger team when you look at the average age of the advisor. And, my leadership role is critical to their success. And so balancing out personal production with the team's success is something that is really front and foremost on my mind. So, I think a lot of my day to day now has evolved to when I'm with clients, it's more, fostering relationships and it's the actual advisory practice and it's less of the, minutia stuff. Really, that's what it gets down to. And I'm very blessed to have an amazing support system. That's not just in the office, but also at home with my beautiful wife, Anya. My kids are great. And, I think that gives me real peace where I know that I can come in and focus on the team and kind of big picture stuff with the team. And then when it comes to production, I can kind of just get on to meetings and be all teed up. I don't have to worry about the minutia. So
that's exciting. And so I love that because you need to support both, home and at work. And it's nice to hear that, you've probably 3 times the business and, you're in the top 1% now. And I think there's another 5 times coming for you of the business and yourself. But that didn't come without all these different turning points, especially the last one, building this team out and going from, a 5-6 person team to almost a 20 person team was a major change. How is the mindset? What is your mindset now? How different is it than it was before, or is it the same?
Well, it's definitely different now. I've listened to a bunch of your podcasts and scalability comes up quite frequently. That's something that we are laser vision focused on is how to build this thing out, getting the right people in the right seats, getting the right advisors, calling the right people, getting the right advisors, presenting to the right people, moving from being a good financial planner to being a good business owner is a work in progress, Paul. And I think that is right now, August of 2024. That's my biggest challenge is how to really build this thing out the right way as a business owner. And so that's the focus right now. And I've been working, intimately with some of the internal partners at Barnum. I have a good support group of colleagues, that aren't necessarily on my team that I bounce things off of. And that's where a lot of my day-to-day focus is on right now.
That's great. And here's the crazy thing, Justin. What you're talking about, if you look at entrepreneurs in our society, and there's certain trades, I'll use building, for example, or construction. What I always hear bad stories about them. And I always hear wow, the guy did a great job of building, my addition. but like they never showed up. They didn't charge me. They overcharged me. Like they didn't know how to run a business. And
Right.
I think in the financial advisor world, you're right. Like you have to build the practice first and get scale. But then to get to the next and to get to the elite, it's really about becoming a CEO that's also practicing, right? And working with clients still, but at the same time, leading and building distribution versus just building themselves. So congratulations on the track that you're going and where you're going. It's really exciting. And I think there's two words though that you talked a lot about scale, but there's another word called momentum. I think people sometimes don't realize that you could have momentum both ways, meaning you could have momentum on a negative way where you're going down the hill and it gets faster and faster and faster. And obviously, when I look at your team, you have momentum just getting faster and faster and moving quicker. Like, talk about what that's like today on a day-to-day basis. Like, how exciting. I know you guys just moved into a brand new office and you're all together for the first time. You've only been in there probably 60 days.
Yeah.
Talk about the momentum you guys have now.
Yeah, I mean, the momentum is amazing, thanks to some of the lead programs that we have access to, our books of business. I mean, there's never ending people to see. And that is, going back 17, 18 years ago, I couldn't imagine a world where I didn't have to worry about, who I had to talk to, next. So the momentum is there because there's a never ending, group of people to meet with and talk to. It is such a mental business, as far as having like a strong mental foundation. It's such an attitude business at the end of the day. We're only human. The long hours, we deal obviously with rejection, the things that pop up over the course of the day that could, have your day come to a screeching halt. We're in the people business. We want to be the trusted advisor. We want to be on speed dial for clients. If a major life event happens, I mean, it was just 2 weeks ago. I was, my whole day was laid out. I have a very rigid schedule, and a client passed away out of nowhere, in his 50s. It's terrible. And you're dealing with the widow, and you're all of a sudden everything has to come to a screeching halt. And so it's so important to balance out the mental challenges of this business and deal with the curveballs that get thrown at you on a day-to-day basis. A big part of it is, I think, having thick skin. Obviously, that's a non-negotiable, but also taking care of yourself. I've really started to focus on this in the last couple of years. Making sure that I'm mindful of, what I eat and what I drink, making sure that I could get a workout in, every morning, or at least get like a good, 20 minutes in. I think that's really critical to having a good foundation is taking care of yourself.
Well, it's interesting you say that. Yesterday, we had our largest class of new advisors start, 30 new advisors. And probably I'm one of the first ones to speak and welcome them. And I talked about, I said, most of them are off the college campus. And I said, welcome to, you're now a corporate athlete. And I went through a lot of that. You only have time, you only have so much time. And if you don't start to get up early and get that routine and get a sweat, get your reading in, whatever you like to do, you got to do. And it's going to get you ready for the day. And I said, I was out to dinner with a few of them last night, and one of them resonated. I said that there's no off season as a corporate athlete. Like in sports, you get an off season and a preseason and a post. As you said earlier, there's no breaks. You have to take the breaks, and you have to be in physical. And here's the thing that I think people are forgetting. The physical aspect is one thing, so you can work and you can be balanced and you feel good, but you have to feed your mind as much as you feed your body. So I think in our society today, you have two things you have to balance, and you're doing that. And I'm glad to hear about the physical part, because you always had the mental. Now that's probably feeding into your business fast and furious. So congratulations. It's funny about the leads and all the opportunities you and your team have in front of you. I was on the phone with another CEO the other day, and I was getting pitched on a lead program, an opportunity program. I like to call them opportunities. And I said, this sounds amazing, but I have more opportunities for my advisors than I have advisors. And they said, you're probably the only firm in America that has that problem. I'm like, all right, well, that's a good list to be on. And I'm glad that you you're maximizing those opportunities. So Justin, listen, all this stuff is going great. You're getting the personal, you got the professional, but there's always challenges in the business. And what are some of the challenges you had when you first started, but are they different today? And maybe you can share some of those.
Yeah, for sure. So starting off, the challenges were always being able to see enough people. I mean, that was, 18 years ago when I got into the business. The hardest part was filling up your calendar. A good week back then was seeing maybe 6 to 8 people, clients over the course of a week. With technology now and with having a book of business and having the resources at Barnum, I frequently see 6 to 8 people a day. I mean, I'm at 40 Zoom meetings a week on average. So that is no longer an issue, getting in front of people. The challenges that I face now really revolve around the scaling, on building the practice the right way. There comes a capacity point where I can't see any more people.
You're there now.
Absolutely. And we preach a very strong service model for our clients. So our gold clients, which are, I don't know, maybe 20% of our clients, we're getting in front of them quarterly. We feel very strongly that a lot could change in a year, right? Like the average advisor meets with their client on an annual basis. Just look at where the stock market was a year ago, where interest rates were at a year ago. I mean, things change pretty frequently. So, meeting with gold clients on a quarterly basis, and then also meeting with new clients, there's only so many hours in the day. So figuring out how to delegate some of that to the junior advisors, figuring out how to build the practice the right way so we can be more of that enterprise, I think is the biggest challenge right now. And it really involves taking a step back and reflecting. And I'm so go, and I'm so case and task and client oriented that it's tough for me to block a couple hours in my calendar to have a think tank session with the advisors on my team or the administrative staff. But it's absolutely critical. It's, kind of like one step backwards for 2 steps forward. But that's absolutely the biggest challenge right now. I'd say that the second biggest challenge, and it kind of complements this, is that I've had an epiphany in the last year, I would say, that if you really want to do this job the right way, right? If you really want to be that holistic financial planner, that person on speed dial, it's hard work. It is a lot of hours. It is a lot of challenges. And, again, there's only so many hours in the day. So that's something that I preach frequently to the guys and gals on my team, is that if you want to be someone who just sells a mutual fund or sell a life insurance policy, if you want it to be more of a commoditized practice, that's not too tough, I think. But if you really want to be that special relationship to your clients, it is a lot of hard work, and that involves a lot of man hours. And again, it's a capacity issue at the end of the day. So I think scaling the practice and figuring out my calendar at the end of the day and my advisor's calendar is probably the hardest part right now.
Well, it's interesting. You hit a special chord for me on the 40 appointments. Think about that. You went from 6 to 8, or let's call it 7 to 40. How can you not grow, right? Obviously, your skills keep going up. The more touches you get, more opportunities, if you think about it, right? The tipping point talks about how if you get 10,000 hours, you become a master. Well, you're doing 5-6 times the amount of meetings per week. So you get there. One of the things I'm teaching, Justin, is you're not this gift that we got from COVID, all the bad. We got this great gift of Zoom where now you're national and you're seeing 40 people a week and 95% is through technology. What I've been teaching FAs now is now you have to, because you maximize one side of the funnel, right? Meaning see people. Now it's how do you get the size of the case? And that's where the planning comes in as the case size grows. But here's what you have to do is you're building distribution now. I have advisors scoring their meetings. And what I mean by that is let's pick a meeting that's a 10. It could be that, you're going into your third meeting and you have all the proposals. It's based on the goals and objectives. They said yes. And now, it's just a sale. That's a 10. And a 1 might be just a client that you sold 20 years ago that one of your juniors booked for you for an annual review that doesn't have a lot of stuff with you. So what I've been challenging our advisors to do is take your year, go back and score 3 weeks, and you come up with, and you say, all right, I'm averaging 280 points So my average client is 7 or 6 because you're doing 40 meetings. 6 times 4 is, that's the number. And now how do you get it to 7 per meeting? And you have to start to get those bottom meetings. Because remember, there's a saying, every client's an A client for someone. So now you have to get them in the right hands and the right opportunities, as you said earlier. But if you start challenging yourself to up your score, now that you got the critical mass, that's how you'll you'll grow to the next level, which is pretty exciting.
I love that. Yeah.
And I think it's just it's a cool exercise that you start to teach, but you got to get the advisors to first buy into, let's fill the calendar, like number one, and get that right mentality. If I was to bring you back, say in 5 years from now onto the show, or let's say 3 years, what's the team going to look like in 3 years? I know you're working through it, but I know you have an amazing vision. Why don't you share with us what the team's, going to look like?
Yeah, I think in the next, let's say 3 to 5 years, we'd like to increase our advisors by maybe 30% or so. I mean, we've grown so much in the last few years. I think we have to take a little bit of a pause and, catch up a little bit. So I think building out the advisors, maybe adding on another 3 to 5 over the next 3 years. And then as far as the administrative staff goes, as these younger advisors on the team start to move up from a production standpoint, we're going to need to really scale out the admin staff twice as fast. I mean, that's really what it gets down to. There's needs, there's necessities like the business processors, and then there's kind of like luxury buys, I would call it, like getting somebody to do our marketing or maybe a dedicated power planner. And so I think as we formalize the team and we start to really focus on the entrepreneurial side of the house and sharing in expenses, the admin side of the house is going to have to scale up a little bit quicker than the advisor side. That's really the 3 to 5 year vision. We have all sorts of internal company conferences and things like that. I'm not happy with just, me and Rick and Alan making it. I want to have, half a dozen advisors at the next conferences. That's a big goal of mine. And then continue to do our community events. So Rick is very active in a charity called the Center for Great Expectations. I'm very active in the Morristown Community Soup Kitchen that was rebranded recently as Nourish NJ. And so we try to have community days, at least once a month or once a quarter. So continuing that going and giving back to the community is critical as well. And then I think for everybody from advisors to admins to senior partners to juniors, it sounds so cliche, but the whole work hard, play hard thing, trying to find that balance. I don't want these employees and these partners of mine to burn out. I think that's really something that's critical. So focusing on wellness is just as important as the production goals.
I love it. You hit a chord for me earlier when you were talking about scale and technology. I mean, we talked a lot about using Zoom or Teams or any of those type of tools, but you have a huge book of business. How are you managing that through technology today? And is that helping to scale the practice? And is it because I feel like, you didn't have a tool like the CRM system that we have and the connectivity, but how is that helping you today?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, leaps and bounds. Like I would say we're probably like a B- right now when it comes to the systems and technology. And 5 years ago, we were like a D+. Like I can't believe the days of like writing things on Post-it notes and sticking them onto my monitor.
That crazy.
Yeah. And the Siris and the Alexas and, there was so many different systems. And so we really bought into the Barnum technology, which is essentially, using a centralized database, using the CRM, using Salesforce for not just prospecting, but also the business processing side of the house. It's a mindset shift. You have to make it like muscle memory. For example, when you get off the phone with the client or you get done with the client facing meeting, you got to go in there and you got to log stuff, right? The CRM is not psychic. You got to feed it with data. But if you can get everybody rowing in the same direction, because we run a collaborative practice, pretty much every piece of business that we write is a revenue share, and people work remotely sometimes too, and so we're not always in the office at the same time. So we're embracing it. It is a work in progress. But I mean, when I think about how far we've come in a relatively short period of time, it's really amazing. I mean, our team, I would say, it varies by advisor, but I mean, 98% of our meetings now are virtual. Everything is DocuSign. So I mean, it's really become, it's a game changer, Paul. I mean, it really is.
I remember having meetings with your team and everyone saying, well, we're going to go back to face to face. And I said, listen, you do what you want, but I just think that clients like it. It saves them time. It saves you time. It's way more efficient. And if done properly, it's a game changer. So I'm glad to hear you say that. And using technology, like one of the ways you're going to scale, and you've scaled already, is using that. Imagine if you were doing it the old way with the stickies, you'd probably have to have 10 staff now just to manage the amount of business that your team is bringing in on that. So Justin, this has been amazing. I guess the one question I would have is, I'm listening. I hear everything. You gave probably like 25 nuggets. So thank you. But, boil it down to like one or two things that you would say, like your last parting gift. If I'm listening, I'm an experienced producer. What should I be doing? Or if I'm someone that's having good success, but I want to break through like you did, what do I do? What's the next thing?
Yeah. So I don't think it's just one thing, Paul. I think it's a number of things that you stack on top of each other and you just keep building towards something better and better. I think when you're starting off in the business, you spend so much time prospecting for clients and developing relationships. People want to do business with people who have really two traits: people that are competent and people that are sincere. That's it. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what you do for a living. If you're in this type of a role where it's client facing, you need to figure out really quickly how you're going to convey that to people. I'm a geography nerd. I don't know why. I like maps, right? I just do. I use that as a strength when I'm on a call with a client who's in a different part of the country. I'll just talk about the Twin Cities if they're in Minnesota, or if I'm in, San Diego, I'll talk about going to a ball game, a Padres game or something like that.
So you build rapport through just commonality.
Yeah. Just little things. You don't sound like a robot. But
it's interesting you say that, because I do think that, as we talked about scoring appointments, I think getting a Zoom meeting to almost be like a face-to-face meeting again is going to be the next level of, that's the game of 2 or 3, 4% that we should get. And that's an example of, building rapport that maybe doesn't happen. We think it doesn't happen, but it can happen the same way this way as it can face-to-face.
Amen.
That's such a great tip, Justin. Thank you.
Yeah, that's definitely one of them. The other is get your credentials, licensing, and education banged out as early as you can. Things get tough. You have a family, you have children. Work gets, your book of business builds up. So I think that's a pretty easy one. There was a lot of sacrifice to getting the CFP and the ChFC, and I'm still a lifelong learner and I'm still learning stuff, but that was a really big hurdle to overcome from a cannibalization of my time standpoint, was sitting for that exam. So I think that's critical too.
And if you look young, grow a beard, guys.
Yeah.
Well, Justin, listen, this has been amazing. Congratulations on your success. And as you keep talking, all I keep thinking to myself is small steps, big wins. And that's exactly what you've done through your whole career. But the last 5 years, you've just been stacking one good day on top of the next, and the vision and your thinking. So congratulations on your success. I can't wait to have you back in a few years to share where you are now. And if you're listening, go back if you were driving or you're on the treadmill or something and take some notes. But remember, share, go on Apple, go on Spotify, share with your friends. And thank you, Justin, for giving the time up today to make an impact on so many other lives out there that are entrepreneurs or financial service advisors. So we appreciate you. Thank you,
Paul.
And keep up the great work.
Thanks a lot, Paul. I appreciate it.
You got it. Have a great day, Justin.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484. Telephone number 203-513-6000.